The Commonwealth has accused Karen Reed of striking her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her car after a night of drinking and leaving him in the snow to die. The defense is saying, as they said in their opening statement, that Karen Reed was framed and this is all a cover-up. Well, the morning of day 14 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed was busy in court because we got to the cross-examination of Matt McCabe, which after Matt said, I didn't see anyone practice fighting at the bar, they were grab-assing, got into his text messages. It seems that they are maybe from Jen McCabe's phone extraction. That has not been proven in evidence yet, but from looking at them, that's what it seems like. But as we got to the text messages, there is clearly a group chat where Matt McCabe is saying that he was driving by 34 Fairview and troopers were there digging something up. He later said it was snow and that he was going to try to get a picture of that, but that wasn't really the point of those text messages. It was the fact that he was texting Brian Albert's wife, Nicole, his wife, and himself to tell Chris Albert that the guy never came inside and that Brian Albert responded to that text exactly. And that those texts happened on February 1st, 2022. January 29th is when John O'Keefe, referred to by Matt McCabe as the guy, was found at 34 Fairview. And somehow from February 1st, they said that Chris Albert was supposed to say that to Channel 4 News, that the guy never came inside the house. Unbelievable text messages that the prosecution never brought up. They knew that that was coming in cross-examination. Everyone has these texts. And they never gave this witness an opportunity to explain that before the defense brought it in, which allowed what I think was a very impactful moment for the defense. I'm interested in your thoughts about the impact of that moment. Does it change the way you see this case? Or are you still at, I've got a ton of questions, but I don't know how you overcome these witnesses saying this as it comes to where, if anywhere, Karen Reed is in all of this? Because we went from Karen Reed was screaming over the phone to Jen McCabe. Jen McCabe was fairly calm during all of this, unless you ask Brian Albert and his wife, and then they say she wasn't, to the back and forth that morning. But the group texts afterwards, the missing cell phones afterwards, I don't know how the prosecution is going to overcome that doubt, even if the jury doesn't believe that something was done by any of these parties. How do you believe at this point something was done by Karen Reed? The state has not put anything into evidence yet that shows how they believe Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with his car. And it is the last day of week 3. At the end of day 14 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, I am exhausted. Chat is exhausted. It seems that the lawyers and the judge are also exhausted. Today was a long day. It just felt long. It was actually long. The day ended with the end of the direct examination of Jen McCabe. There were times that her direct examination felt like a cross-examination and it was very clipped short answers. Yes, no, this, that. There were times that they were very fast narratives of what was happening. The testimony at times I found hard to follow. And the testimony is coming right on the heels of her husband's text messages saying the guy was never in the house. So the Commonwealth putting Matt McCabe up before Jen McCabe leads into her testimony with her husband's testimony and everybody going, I mean, okay, so he woke up, he heard Karen Reed screaming over the phone. Karen Reed came over to the house. His wife left to go find John. And then you get to cross-examination and went, what? You're texting in a group chat. What now? And that leads into Jen McCabe's testimony. And I can't imagine it's out of the jurors' minds, because it for sure wasn't out of mine. And I tried very hard to listen to Jen McCabe's testimony, because there were things in it that are consistent with other testimonies. There are things in it we had not heard before. We got some timing of when Jen finally disclosed to somebody that she heard Karen Read definitively say, she says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him 3 times. Her testimony was, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She said it 3 times to an EMT. That is what Jen McCabe said. But then she said that she didn't relay that to law enforcement, and she called Lank on his cell phone to come back so she could tell Lank about all the things she heard Karen Read say. Though woven throughout her testimony, she says Karen Read is screaming. She's hysterical. Carrie Roberts is telling her to shut the fuck up. I think I'm embellishing that. I think it was just to shut up. The vibe was, it was a shut the fuck up, but it was telling her to shut up, telling her to stop screaming, telling her that she was batshit crazy. That came out on the stand. That Karen Read was hysterical, was yelling at all of them, was saying, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? And screaming their names, both of their names. There was also testimony that when Karen saw John, when they were pulling up, that Jen McCabe didn't see anything. And Karen was like banging to get out of the car, the back seat of the car, and ran to where John was and lifted up her shirt and lifted up his shirt and was like laying on top of him, which rang very true to me, that that's what Karen Read did when she got out of the car, is ran to John and started laying on top of him. There are parts of her testimony that are consistent with what we're seeing from the dash cam videos and from other testimony. And there are parts that were hard to follow. She testified that Karen Read was pointing out to them at the back of the car when they got back to John O'Keefe's home to look for him, that she was pointing out to them about her taillight, but the Ring doorbell shows none of it. Jen McCabe said that Karen Read was screaming hysterically the entire time, but the Ring doorbell didn't say that. But we saw some of that in the police footage. It is going to be interesting to see what comes up on cross. I was surprised the prosecution didn't bring in more of the phone records that start pinning the times down. They did bring in the phone records showing Jen McCabe texting John O'Keefe and John O'Keefe not answering. But it raises the question, when they're texting and texting and texting, why didn't anyone go out of the house and knock on the door if they saw the SUV out there? And then Jen McCabe said, it wasn't until my husband said the next morning, but we saw them at Fairview, that she even realized that that was Karen Read's SUV outside of Fairview. She said Karen Read told her she left John at the waterfall and that everybody was completely confused that morning. It will be interesting to parse through the rest of this testimony on cross-examination, but it was a lot. It had very interesting starts and stops. There was a lot of leading going on with the prosecution, very little objecting, because I'm sure the defense is just like, say whatever you're going to say, because just say whatever you're going to say is cross-examination will be when court resumes on Tuesday. But she also said Karen was imploring her to search hypothermia and how long it takes to die in the snow, where there are paramedics, it seems, and police officers everywhere. She said that Karen is screaming, I hit him, and is he dead? And that's consistent with what law enforcement said, is he dead? But I am left with the one question. If Karen Read is wailing, I hit him, why does no one treat it like a crime scene? Again, the actions for me are what I'm looking at in this case, because I want to see the video evidence, the cell phone evidence, the text message evidence. I am going to be looking at all of that information, because it wasn't till Officer Lank came back that it seems Jen McCabe ever said she heard Karen Read saying over and over and over, I hit him. And no one seemed to treat it at the time as if Karen Read said that in any meaningful way. One paramedic said she heard Karen Read saying that to another woman at the scene. But we also heard testimony she was saying, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? I don't know if this testimony clears anything up for anyone, because this case has gotten so convoluted at this point, it's very hard to parse. But it seems clear to me that the prosecution might be hanging quite a lot of their case on the testimony of Jen McCabe. The defense has said that the how long to die in the snow search occurred sometime after 2:26, 2:27 in the morning. And she's saying that happened the next morning when she got to Fairview. At this point, I just want to see the digital evidence. I need the records from the phone company before I even know what to think with anything. Because law enforcement at the scene did not treat this like a homicide case. So I need to see a lot more information at this point. One thing is clear: at the end of 3 weeks of testimony, we still don't know how the prosecution believes that Karen Read hit John O'Keefe with her car. I imagine next week we'll start to get into the scientific data at some point. We know that everybody was at the waterfall. The testimony with regard to the waterfall is fairly consistent. Everything from people going to basketball games and people going out to eat, everything up until 12:15, 12:20 is consistent. After 12:20, everything goes off the fucking rails. I don't know if I've ever seen a case that is so convoluted and confusing 3 weeks in. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.